Emily and Lucas. Emily assists, supports, and trains faculty and staff in the Web CT Vista environment, as well as other emerging web technology. Lucas assists and supports faculty and staff with the implementation of technology to support their teaching and learning. So as you know that we have 3 parts for this series, and today is the first one. So hope you enjoy it. We will have time for question and answer during the presentation. Now I will ask Emily and Lucas and give the microphone to Emily for a start. Enjoy your training, and Emily, you can start.
Thanks. Great. Thanks, Afsane. So again, I just want to do an audio check one last time before we head into the content. Some of you said yes in the text chat area. If everybody could now, instead of saying yes, in the participants area where everybody's name is lined up, if you could click, there's a box just below everybody's name. There's a yes, a check mark, a little check icon. If you could all just give me the thumbs up that everybody can hear me, that would be great, and then we'll get started. I will do intermittent audio checks throughout the session. That's great. Okay, perfect. So welcome everybody to the first installment of the Technology Buffet for Dental Hygiene Instructors. Again, my name is Emily Reno, and I'm here today working with Lucas Wright for the next hour. Today's first part series is about live classroom. Tomorrow's session is part 2, which will be about UBC blogs. And part 3 next week on December the 13th will be on UBC wikis. So again, it probably sounds like to everybody I'm doing this a lot, but really because everybody's logging in to hear a presentation today versus sitting in front of each other and sort of having a face-to-face meeting, sound checks are very important when you're using live classroom, and I'll talk a bit more about this in a minute. So I always do this, push out this slide to my participants. Again, I do a sound check, and I get them to either do a text chat back to me saying yes or no, they can hear me, or they can do a variety of, select a variety of icons at the bottom of the screen. Afsane has actually already introduced us, so I'll just skip over that slide and head into our agenda today. So again, today's agenda, we have a kind of a tight timeline, but I'm sure we're going to fit everything into the next probably 50 minutes at this point. We had our introductions. I'll start off with a bit of a poll. I'll talk a bit about what is live classroom. We'll look at 5 tips for success using live classroom. Some of the uses for live classroom. Again, there's a variety of different reasons why you would want to use live classroom. We'll look at some key points. I've put Q&A at the end, but at this point, because we're going to be looking at a lot of different material, you can certainly interject with your questions. And Lucas is here again helping co-facilitate the session. And if he's fairly new to live classroom, but if he thinks if he can't answer the question, then I'll certainly attempt to answer that for everybody. And then we'll round off the online session with a bit of a feedback survey at the end. Okay, so I just wanted to start off with a bit of a poll in live classroom. So if everybody just wants to take a minute or so and just read through some of those responses. Perhaps some of you have actually used live classroom already. If you haven't, that's okay too. I'm starting from a really basic level here for this online session. Okay, so I have some responses back. I'm just going to push those out to good to see everybody chose the top two. It's not a pain in the eye. It's not a pain in the neck yet. But so you are right with your first two selections. Live Classroom is a virtual classroom software that combines state-of-the-art interactive technologies such as voice, application sharing, polling, and whiteboarding, as well as Live Classroom can help organizations with online meetings, briefing sessions, presentation, interviewing potential employees, conference sessions, and professional development events, as well as a number of other uses, and we'll talk a bit about that more in a couple of minutes. So again, just to expand on what is Live Classroom. Live Classroom is actually a supported tool at UBC. A lot of both face-to-face and online sessions are using Live Classroom. It combines a state-of-the-art interactive technology such as voice. Obviously, you can hear my voice now. There's application sharing. So what application sharing is I can share out portions of my computer or my desktop to participants that have logged in. You can do interactive polling, which you saw a minute ago. So I can create surveys and get feedback from participants online, as well as there's a shared whiteboard, and we'll actually see that in a couple of minutes. It enables teachers to add greater interaction to their online delivery and to foster better communication with students. Secondly, organizations can use it for online meetings, presentation, conference sessions, professional development events. UBCHR has used it to interview potential applicants to UBC. Instructors are using it for virtual office hours. So students can't necessarily get to campus. They can actually log in and have a one-on-one meeting with the instructor. Instructors are also using it for group assignments. We'll see this in a couple of minutes. You can actually create breakout rooms in Live Classroom. And if you are teaching a large online section, you can break your students into smaller groups and have them work on group assignments. So the slide I'm pushing out now is actually the Live Classroom interface. Myself as a presenter, I'm looking at something a little bit different from you. You can tell by the slide that I've pushed out. There's a couple of components we'll go over. So mine's going to look a little bit different from yours. You're all logged in as participants into my online session. But I, as the presenter, have a little bit more control over what is pushed out to you in terms of content. I'm actually using something called the whiteboard, as I mentioned earlier. It's an excellent interactive feature to use when you're using Live Classroom. I'll start off with, there are 5 key components of the Live Classroom interface. There's the content frame, number 1. Number 2 is the presenter console. Number 3 is the audio links. Number 4 is the text chat area. And number 5 is the participant area. So the number 1, the content frame, is where I'm pushing out all of my content to you. And content is in the form of PowerPoint slides. You can push a PDF out to participants. You can push a web page. Predominantly, though, you're probably going to push PowerPoint slides out, which is what I'm using here. So if you already have created PowerPoint slides, all you have to do is upload them into the backend, and then you push them out one by one. And how you push them out into the content frame is into another, if you look in the other area, number 2, it's the presenter console. Again, you don't see this on your side, but you can obviously see this in the little image here, is if you look down the list here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is where my PowerPoint list is displayed, and so all I have to do is click on those, and then my content is pushed out to participants. Staying in the presenter console area, if I look at the top, There's a number of small buttons. It might be a little bit light on your side to see. Hopefully you can make them out ever so slightly. You'll see there's two tabs at the top. There's a content tab and then a breakout room tab. Again, I mentioned this earlier. If you were teaching large groups of students, you can have them log into the live classroom area. You can create breakout rooms and subdivide your larger class into smaller groups. As well, there are, if you can see lightly, there's three gray buttons: a web button, an Eboard button, and a share button. I mentioned this earlier. If you wanted to push out an internet address to participants, you can click on the web address, and it'll push out an external web page into the content frame. The Eboard, I mentioned that earlier. This is what I'm using now. This is an interactive electronic whiteboard that both you and your students can co-collaborate on. The third button is a share button. This is an application share. Again, I mentioned this earlier, if I wanted to share out something on my desktop, so if I was showing somebody how to use Microsoft Excel, or if I was showing somebody how to use Microsoft Word or Web CT Vista, I can share out my entire computer screen or a portion of my screen. So again, the presenter console is really the nerve central of your live classroom. It contains all the features you will need to lead a live presentation. And at the very top of that presenter console, I skipped this area, but it's actually an important area, is where you would start the archive of your session. Again, archives are important for those participants that were not unable to attend your online session. You would create an archive of this session. It creates an MP4, and then you can post that file for participants that were not able to make the online session. Into our third area, we have our audio links. You probably don't see that on your side too much. This is just the audio area provides me with, it's basically the media area, so I can see, it gives me stats on so you can see it as students. So the media bar area contains net stats. There's a talk button, volume meters. There's a camera. If I wanted you to see what I looked like or what you look like. Again, you can also, there's a telephone simulcast as well as other menu options. I'm actually going to push out the camera. My camera's actually not working today, which is too bad. But if you wanted your participants to see what you look like in the media bar area, I would push out my picture to you. Okay, moving into number 4, the text chat area. We've all been playing around with this just a little bit, the text chat area. This is where I communicate with students or participants, and you can communicate with me. And everyone can play around with this. I'm just going to push out my email address to you in the text chat area. You should see where that comes up. If everybody just wants to type in something like hi or how are you and hit enter, I'd like to see make sure everybody knows where the text chat area is. I got 2. How about Ray? There we go, Ray. And guest says hi. I'm not sure the guest is. Maybe it's Afsane. No, Afsane said hi. Okay. Okay, so everyone knows the text chat area is. Further in the text chat area, there's public chats and private chats. So I'm sending my chats to the main room. To the main room, but I'm also able to send private chats to people as well. I can disable that for participants, but I think most of you, generally you push it out to the default main room, but if you click the drop-down menu, you are able to select a person to have a private chat with. Okay, and last but not least, we talked about this a little bit earlier, the participants area. Again, whoever logs into your live classroom, this is where their name will be displayed. This is where their name will be displayed. Again, this is kind of a secondary nerve central. I can enable a variety of things in this area. I can choose to enable people's audio. I can choose to enable people that have logged in to be presenters on the fly. I can allow people to raise their hand. So this is actually a good feature. For the people that have logged in, if you put out a question to people, people can actually raise their hand. So why don't we everybody can click down below the participants list. There's a number of icons there. I think I mentioned this before. There's a check mark, an X, and a hand. If everybody wants to click on the hand, so you can see how as people start to lift their hand, you can see you are assigned a number, and this is how I would select the people to answer questions. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is obviously versus sitting in a face-to-face class. I could probably see who raised their hand at the first time around. Again, I can just put a question out to the audience, and people can raise their hand. As well, you should probably see on your side an icon with a little happy face. If you click and expand that, there's a sub-menu underneath there. You can select a further icon to express how you're feeling. So we have some hand claps. Again, this is a good area. The participants area is a really good area to gauge how participants are feeling in your online session. Great. Okay, everybody's having fun with their little pictures there. Okay, so the next couple of slides, really, I just wanted to pull out what I think are the key points to keep in mind, rather, if you're going to be using Live Classroom. The first one is to prepare your participants. If you remember, last week I actually sent out an email to everybody who planned to log into the online session. It was a fairly detailed email. It gave you a web address to sign up to. It gave you a web address to sign up to. It asked you to perform a quick diagnostic on your computer, the setup wizard, and it also provided with a support number in the event you were having problems setting up your computer for the live classroom environment. Again, I can't really stress this enough. Is to make sure your participants perform this setup wizard. This will really avoid a lot of problems, last-minute problems for people logging into the live classroom, because you don't really want your live session to be about helping people through technical issues. You want those technical issues to have been resolved prior to them logging into your online session. Again, I'd recommend buying a fairly good headset. I think the one I'm using now really was actually about $20 or $25. It was a Logitech computer headset, which can be purchased at basically any Future Shop or a store like that in town. Tip number 2, communicating with participants. Again, the primary way of using Live Classroom is for participants to log in and use a headset. Secondly, they can use the text chat area. But a backup method, which Afsane did use this morning, she was having trouble with her audio, was she actually phoned in, and she did that introduction over the phone because her audio wasn't working. So she logged into the live classroom environment, and she saw the slides, but basically she was on her phone line. And again, this is just my example slide that I usually push out to participants, is to get them to use the text chat area as one of the ways to communicate. Is there any questions so far? I've kind of been flying through some of this content, but is there any questions coming in? So Janet wants to know if it's a 1-800 number. It's actually a 604 number. 604. Can't remember exactly. So it's a local number, and then there's two different kinds of PIN numbers that are given out. A PIN number, one PIN number for a presenter, and one PIN number for a student. So unfortunately, no, it's not a 1-800 number. Again, tip number 3 is really getting fairly familiar with your participants, your managing participants list area. We looked at these earlier. What you probably also want to do before you have everybody log in is maybe get them to familiarize themselves with some ground rules around about being in the live classroom environment. Again, we use the yes and no, the hand raise, or if they are happy with some of the content going on, they can use the emoticons. For managing communication, again, you can enable individual people to have audio, video, and text as well. And I'm going to select, hopefully Janet has her audio going. I'm just going to select Janet, if you don't mind, Janet, to try out your audio. So hold on one second. Janet, do you want to try and speak to everybody? If you click the talk, hold the talk button down. Janet might not have her audio going, so how about Rebecca? Rebecca, would you like to try it? So Rebecca, if you hold the talk button down, we should be able to hear you. Well, on a good day, that feature does work. So I'm not sure what's happening on your side, Rebecca. We didn't necessarily do an audio check at the beginning, but normally that does work. Unfortunately, it's not really shining right now, that feature. So, but again, you can select presenters on the fly, as well as you could select members of your participants to share the audio portion of your online session. So Janet has a question. What's the optimal size of participants for moderating? I think it depends on how comfortable you are in the live classroom environment. When I first started out, Janet, I think I probably had about 3 or 4 or 5 people tops, because there's a lot of things you're kind of watching for on the screen here. I have Lucas helping me today, but normally I'm doing this by myself. So you are simultaneously talking about content on the screen, pushing out slides, trying to moderate the participants area, the text chat area, maybe doing a little bit of technical troubleshooting at the same time. So you're really multitasking to the nth degree when you're doing an online session. So if you're starting out to use the live classroom environment, I would probably go with 10 or under, and even just do a couple of dry runs with some of your friends or colleagues just to get used to the online environment. But once you get used to some of the features, and again, when you're starting out, you don't have to use everything that I'm describing. I'm using the basics today. Again, I haven't enabled everybody's audio, but sometimes I do that. So really all I do is upload some PowerPoint. I'm pushing out some content to you in the content frame area, and you're basically listening to me. So it's a bit of a sage on the stage at this point. Bottom line is, again, I would start out slow with live classroom. Once you begin to feel comfortable with the tools, then really, now I can probably do it with 20 or 25, 30 people. So hopefully that answers your question, Janet. Okay, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Some of the ways to display content is you can push out a website. Again, you can push out a website right into this content frame area, or you can push out a website that opens up another browser window which is going to actually be, it'll kind of supplant or be on top of this live classroom area. So I wouldn't recommend that. I would actually make sure you push out that web page right into the content frame here. Secondly, again, there's an Eboard, electronic Eboard, again, which lets you and your participants co-create things. I'm going to enable that Eboard now, and we're all going to try that, just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So hopefully everybody on your side, you should start to see the whiteboard load on the far left-hand side. Does everybody see that? And if you can start drawing, there's kind of a menu bar that'll show up on the left-hand side for you. If everybody wants to start drawing on this and deface my my live classroom interface. Sure, none of us are real Picassos at this, but we'll try and mark this up. And the point of this Eboard, this shared Eboard, is if you, I know in student services they're actually using a live classroom for tutoring. I think they're using it. The math department is using it for tutoring. So what happens in the tutoring, AMS tutoring is actually using is a tutor logs in, and then participants can log in, and the tutor shows a student a particular formula. They can co-create or co-collaborate a document together, and this document or this particular whiteboard can be shared and then used at a later date or sent to the student by email as a record of what was discussed during their live classroom session. So somebody actually erased the slide, which is fine, but chances are what you want to do is probably save it, and it saves it as an MP3. So anyway, so that is how the Eboard works. It's a good sort of interactive tool that everybody can use at the same time. Last but not least, the probably the most important tips. Again, these are in no particular order because it's kind of my top 5 list, or my survival guide to using a live classroom. Number 5 is archiving a session. I started the archive at the beginning of the session. It creates an MP4 file, and then you can upload this MP4 file to a website somewhere, or you can post the file in your Web CT Vista section if you're using Web CT Vista. You can email it to somebody. And again, it's a great way. It just records the entire session, so if people were not able to log into your online session, they can view it at a later date. Ray asked a question, can a student erase the entire board? Yes, they can. And we just saw that, Ray. It just happened. So if you are going to use that shared whiteboard, you might want to make that explicit to people, that they don't click erase the board. And if something important comes out of that whiteboard, you probably want to save it right away. There is a save button. And you can kind of keep saving. So you would save different iterations of that same image. And yes, you can also disable that function as well, yes. So some suggested uses for live classroom. Again, a number of faculty around UBC are using it for virtual office hours. So students can log in and they can meet with the instructor one-on-one if they're perhaps having some difficulties with their curriculum in their own online course or face-to-face course. You can have polls or surveys in the live classroom environment. You can present online lecture material. Again, there's online office hours. There's interviews, as I mentioned. I'm working with a lady at SLACE, and they are creating an online, using live classroom for online interviews for potential applicants into the SLACE program. You can invite guest speakers or guest presenters from around the globe. Again, you can create groups using the breakout rooms. And I'm going to try that feature now with the breakout rooms. So if you give me 1 second, we'll see if this works. Okay, everybody should have got a message saying they were being moved back to the main room. Great, okay, excellent. Is there any other ideas that anybody can think of for uses for live classroom? Has anybody been using a live classroom at all? Janet, can you see potential uses in your teaching and learning environments? Right, so one instructor wants to use it to lead a live discussion. Is that a fully online course? Right. And Afsani says, I have done a webinar for international participants. Okay, how many participants logged in, Afsani? Yeah, that's great, wow. Did you use the breakout room feature, or was everybody in the same room? Right. Carl says, no, but we are now linking to instructional videos that could go to WIMBA, mediated by the instructor. Yeah, you could do that, Carl. Yes, absolutely, yeah. With strict rules, okay. Again, the amount of uses really within the live classroom, I don't think there's any end to any a variety of reasons why you could use live classroom. So, and again, it's a fully supported tool at UBC. You can, for those of you that have logged into this session, if you want further investigation into using live classroom, you can certainly contact Afsani or your web programmer, and they can certainly give you a one-on-one tutorial how to use it. Janet, how do you keep everyone from speaking at the same time? Well, for this particular session, nobody has the opportunity to speak, and everyone's listening to me. if you are going to enable everybody's audio, again, you have to set some ground rules around using audio. I think it's probably the same way as if you were all sitting in a meeting, or if you're sitting in a classroom, you would encourage everybody not to speak at the same time and use their hands to answer, just like we did here with the hand raising. So I think some of the same rules that apply in a face-to-face environment have to apply in the online environment as well. There are maybe even more stricter guidelines with online environment. Okay, so we've talked a bit about the front end, and this is a quick snapshot of the back end. Really, as I mentioned before, it's exceptionally easy to upload content into the live classroom environment. I've uploaded slides here. So in this particular image, basically on the back end, I've created a bunch of folders, and then I've uploaded my PowerPoint slides into each of these folders. So you may be able to see under the folder name for this one is Dentistry Tech Buffet Live Classroom Demo. Oops. It says 0 slides. This particular image was taken a while ago. But again, if you look down the actual list, you can see there's 19 slides in some of these folders, 18 slides. You can't edit slides in Live Classroom. You have to edit them in PowerPoint and then upload them again. But really, the back end is exceptionally easy. It's a file structure. You create some folders and you upload your PowerPoint slides as well as PDF. Over on the far right-hand side of the same slide, there's a tracking info button, and you can keep track of who has logged in from where. So if you have a global audience, you can keep track of where they're logging in. Again, it's a little bit like Google Analytics. You can see where they've logged in from, if it's Spain, if it's China, if it's Dubai. At the very bottom is an invite button. So I did not use this for this particular online session, but you can click that and it creates an email and sends out all the information about how participants can access this live classroom. So in that email would be a web address, there would be a phone number, like Sunny, when she phoned in this morning, she was having some audio difficulties. Okay, just to recap what I think are my top kind of 5 survival skills in using Live Classroom. Prepare, communicate, manage, display, and archive. Again, prepare your students, get them to buy a good headset, send out your Live Classroom web address, and make sure both you and your participants complete the setup wizard. Communicating with participants, we looked at that. There are a variety of ways to communicate. You can use the text chat area. Participants can also phone in. Managing participants, again, you can use the text chat area as well as the participants area. You can get them to use a variety of different icons to indicate engagement in the live classroom environment with the hands up or the emoticons. Again, number 4, displaying content. You can use the web, push out external web pages, use the interactive Eboard, application share. You import your content, and again, there is Breakout Rooms. And lastly, you can get them to archive the session. So we'll finish up quite ahead of time, but that's okay. Some resources. So again, I mentioned this earlier. If you are interested in using Live Classroom, you can contact your instructional designer, Asani, or your web programmer for more information on getting a Live Classroom environment. A couple more things. You can use Live Classroom inside or outside of Web CT Vista. For all of us here today, I'm using Live Classroom outside of Web CT Vista. Using live classroom outside of Web CT Vista permits a more global audience to log in. And using a live classroom inside of Web CT Vista restricts it to people that have a campus-wide login and that are already a member of your Web CT Vista classroom. So again, there's two ways to use live classroom, inside or outside. If you're going to have global audience or maybe a guest presenter come in, you need to be using live classroom outside of Web CT Vista. I'll email some resources from today's discussion as well. You can contact me at emily.reno@ubc.ca. And Rebecca actually just had a follow-up question. How do I push out a website? That's actually great. You know what? I did skip over that, so I do apologize. I'm going to push out a website, and we'll see what that looks like on your side. So I've just pushed out ubc.ca. Now, the one downside about pushing out a website is that if I wanted to kind of take you on a tour of this website, it's actually not synced up on your side. So if I start clicking around and clicking on some of these links, it doesn't click the links on your side. So if you wanted to take somebody on a tour of a website and have everybody seeing the exact same thing as you are, you'd probably want to do an application share. So which actually opens up your desktop, and then people are looking and a part of the actual web tour that you're giving them. But pushing at a website into the content frame does not sync up what's happening exactly between the participant and the student. Okay, and Carl wants to try the microphone. Okay, Carl, hold on 1 second. Does that make sense, Rebecca, hopefully? And Carl, we're going to try and enable Carl's audio, and he's going to... Oops. Okay, Carl, if you want to try your audio, you can push down the talk button. It should be able to work. Although it's been a bit of a crapshoot today, so... Sorry, no go. Oh. Okay, well, unfortunately that didn't work for Carl, but again, it might be a bit of a global issue today. I'm not sure because it didn't work for Rebecca or Janet as well, so I'll have to look into that. Normally, though, rest assured this feature does work, and I simply choose somebody if they want to answer a question with using their audio. You can just select them. Any other questions at all? Again, I've showed you a lot of stuff today, but you know what? If you are going to use live classroom, I'd start off baby steps into using live classrooms. Just do some of the basics, push out some PowerPoint slides, maybe a website. You could try and use the shared whiteboard and get students to use the text chat area. I start off small for a couple of sessions and then maybe work your way up to using the breakout room, maybe doing an application share. And again, I would do some dry run-throughs with your colleagues if you are going to use live classroom. So again, I showed you this before. Again, I would contact Asane if you want further instructions on how to use live classrooms. You can always contact myself at emily.reno@ubc.ca. Rebecca just had one last question. How do the breakout rooms appear to you as a moderator? I see all the rooms, and I can actually just drag and drop students into different rooms, and I can shuffle people around. And I do see all of my students. I see all of the rooms and all of my students on my screen as well. You don't see that on your side. You're not the presenter, but I would see it on my side, on the far right-hand side. No, and that's actually a good point. If students or participants are going to use the text area in the breakout rooms, that content or whatever transpires between people is not recorded in the archive. Only text chat areas are recorded in the main room. The lobby, somebody had a question about the lobby. The lobby just kind of takes you back to a waiting area. You're not going to see much there. If you're actually a presenter, you might see a couple of classrooms lined up that you are in charge of facilitating, but it's kind of really a waiting area. And Carl wants to know, can instructors start using WIMBA? Oh, Fanny, yeah, of course they can, sure. I think it depends on Fanny if they're going to use it inside of Web CT Vista or outside. So they can email me. If they're going to use it outside of Web CT Vista, they can email me, and I'd have to create a classroom for them. If they're going to use it inside of Web CT, they can contact you or the web programmer and get started that way. Any last questions before I push out a survey for today? Okay, so I'm just going to push out a feedback survey. If you could just take a couple minutes and let me know about today's session. Again, I'll send out a follow-up email with resources from today's session. And if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. And we should see everybody tomorrow at the same time for part 2. We're going to be looking at UBC blogs. And Lucas is going to be leading us through that session. And again, we are going to be logging into Live Classroom, this very same live classroom that you were in today. So we should see you tomorrow. If you could all log in at least 10 minutes before just to check the audio, that would be great. Great. So here's that feedback survey. So you just take a couple minutes to do that. And when you're finished, you can certainly log out, and we'll see you online tomorrow at the same time at about 10 to 12. Thank you very much for attending today's session.